right now, like in this exact moment, there is just a staggering, almost unsettling amount of activity happening inside your head.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if we look at the cognitive research the authors cite in these books, today alone, you are going to experience somewhere between 60,000 and 70,000 individual thoughts.
Which is just a massive number.
It really is. I mean, that's a new thought every second or two of your waking life. It's this constant, unrelenting stream of data and commentary and imagery and judgment. But here is the real catch.
Right, the terrifying part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
90% of those thoughts are the identical thoughts you had yesterday and the day before that.
Yeah, you're basically carrying around tens of thousands of identical mental scripts on an endless loop.
On a playback, yeah. And most of us don't even realize the tape is running.
No, we don't. And it is the biological definition of living on autopilot. Because, the mind loves efficiency, so it just defaults to repetition.
Before we get too far into it, I'm Alex.
And I'm Bailey. We're your narrators here at Summary Sanctum.
And today, we are taking a really intense deep dive into the mechanics of the mind, pulling from some incredibly powerful books on thought control.
Yeah, the core mission of this deep dive is, well, to shift you from being just a passive passenger in that mental vehicle to becoming the deliberate architect of your own reality.
Because the stakes here are absolute. I mean, if you don't actively control your attention and dictate your thoughts, the world is going to do it for you.
Oh, without a doubt.
With its algorithms, its advertisements, the endless outrage cycles on social media, they will happily step in and program your brain.
They're designed to do exactly that. So today we're going to unpack the actual neurobiology of how habits form, the physical mechanics of emotional control, and the invisible daily micro-decisions that build genuine mental sovereignty.
Right. And we aren't just talking about, generic self-help or just telling you to think positive.
No, definitely not.
We are breaking down the literal machinery of your consciousness so you can understand how to physically rewire it.
And to start that rewiring process, the authors demand that we dismantle what they call the biggest illusion of human existence.
Which is a bold claim.
It is, but it's an illusion so deeply embedded in our psychology that we actually structure our entire language around it. And that illusion is the belief that you are the voice in your head.
Okay, yeah.
The books argue, quite aggressively actually, that you are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts.
I have to say, I really struggle with this concept initially because it sounds so, so abstract.
It does. It feels very philosophical.
Right, because when I am stressed, that internal voice doesn't feel like a separate entity. It feels intimately, painfully like me.
Yeah, it feels like it's coming from your core.
Exactly. So when the books talk about this separation, how are they actually defining the observer?
Well, let's look at it linguistically first, and then we can get into the biology. Think about how we describe our internal states in Western culture. We say things like, I am angry, or I am sad, or I am an anxious person.
Right, we use I am.
Exactly. When you use the phrase I am, you are merging your core identity with a highly volatile, completely fleeting mental state.
You're locking yourself to it.
You are. You're taking a temporary pattern of electrical signals in your brain and turning it into a permanent definition of who you are.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
So the books advocate for a microscopic but profound shift in vocabulary. Instead of saying I am angry, you shift to I am noticing anger, or I am experiencing a thought of self-doubt.
So it's really about inserting a physical wedge between the feeling and the identity.
Yes.
Saying I am experiencing anger creates a gap. It actually makes me think of an analogy. Imagine your mind as a house, right?
Okay, I like this.
And your thoughts are the weather outside. So you look out the window and you see a massive thunderstorm. You wouldn't suddenly declare, I am the storm.
Right, because that would be absurd.
Exactly. You are the house. You just happen to be experiencing severe weather right now. Yet when the internal weather gets stormy, we immediately say, I am a disaster, as if the actual walls of the house have somehow become the rain.
That is a perfect way to look at it. And that analogy maps perfectly onto the neurobiology that the authors discuss.
How so?
Well, in the brain, there is a network called the default mode network, or the DMN, and it's the part of your brain that activates when you aren't focused on a specific task.
Like when you're just zoning out.
Yeah, it's the daydreaming, self-reflecting, past-analyzing center. It's what generates that constant internal chatter.
The 60,000 thoughts.
Exactly. So when you say, I am noticing a feeling of insecurity, you are actually physically shifting brain activity away from the DMN and engaging your prefrontal cortex.
Which is the logical part of the brain.
Right. It's the center of higher order logic and observation. So by definition, if you can observe the thought, you cannot be the thought.
Because the observer and the observed have to be two different things.
Yes. Thoughts are merely suggestions. They are pieces of historical data just passing through your nervous system, not absolute commands or undeniable facts.
But wait, I have a pushback here.
Go for it.
If these thoughts aren't us, and they're just data passing through, why do they feel so incredibly targeted?
What do you mean by targeted?
Well, if I have a thought that says, you know, you are going to fail this presentation, that doesn't feel like random weather. That feels like a sniper rifle aimed directly at my deepest insecurities.
Oh, for sure.
So if it's just data, where is that incredibly specific data coming from?
It feels targeted because it actually is targeted. But it's not targeted by an enemy. It's targeted by your own biological machinery.
Like my own brain is attacking me.
Not attacking, protecting. Specifically, it's using past programming. You have to remember, your brain is a prediction machine built entirely for survival, not for your happiness or your peace of mind.
Right, it doesn't care if I'm happy, it just wants me alive.
Exactly. So it references your past experiences to predict future threats. A lot of these hyper-personal, deeply painful thoughts were installed decades ago.
Like when we were kids.
Often during childhood, yeah, by early failures, or maybe harsh comments from authority figures, or just general societal conditioning.
So the brain recorded those embarrassing moments as actual threats.
Yes. It recorded them as threats to your social survival. Because back in tribal days, social rejection meant death. And because the brain always prioritizes negative information to keep you alive, it repeats those warnings endlessly.
Wow, so they feel like fundamental truths simply because of the sheer volume of repetition over the years.
Exactly. It's just a highly protective, very outdated algorithm.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Okay.
So the weather isn't random, it's a specific climate we've been biologically conditioned to expect.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
And the authors really dive deep into this machinery. They explain that your current reality is quite literally hardwired into your neural pathways. You are running on biological hardware and psychological software.
And to really grasp the scale of why changing this software is so incredibly difficult, the books contrast the processing power of our conscious mind versus our subconscious mind.
This part blew my mind.
It's wild, right? So the conscious mind, the part of the listener tuning into our voices right now, the logical, aware part, processes information at a rate of roughly 40 bits per second.
40 bits, which is incredibly narrow.
It's tiny.
It's basically a dial-up modem from the 90s.
Right. But running beneath that, your subconscious mind is processing a staggering 11 million bits per second.
11 million, so 40 bits versus 11 million bits.
The discrepancy there is huge, and it's the root of almost all human frustration.
Because the subconscious is doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, your subconscious is managing your heart rate, your digestion, your spatial awareness, microexpressions, and referencing decades of emotional memory, all simultaneously.
It is the engine of the rocket ship.
Exactly. But the problem is that this 11 million bit per second engine is often running on severely outdated, highly reactive software.
Like those childhood memories we just talked about.
Yes. If you are embarrassed in front of your peers at 8 years old, that massive processor installed a program that equates public vulnerability with mortal danger.
And it is still running that exact program today.
It is. It's generating automatic thoughts of panic whenever you have to speak in a meeting, even though you're an adult in a safe corporate office.
You know, this completely reframes the whole just think positive movement for me.
How so?
Well, if you simply tell yourself, I am a confident speaker, using your 40-bit conscious mind, you are basically throwing a pebble at an oncoming freight train.
That is exactly what it is.
The 11 million-bit subconscious is just plowing right through your little positive affirmation with pure biological terror.
The literature emphasizes that brute force logic rarely works against ingrained biological programming. It just doesn't.
So what does work?
Well, first we have to understand a key component of this 11 million bit machinery, which is something called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS, right.
Think of the RAS as your brain's search engine algorithm. It's physically located at the base of your brain, right above the spinal cord.
Yeah.
Out of the millions of bits of data surrounding you every second, Your conscious mind would just completely shatter if it tried to process all of it.
We'd be overwhelmed instantly.
Exactly. So the RAS acts as the bouncer at the club of your consciousness. It decides what actually gets through the filter.
And how does it decide? What's the criteria?
It looks at your dominant, repetitive thoughts. If your dominant thoughts, your search queries basically are about scarcity, fear, and how everyone is out to get you, your RAS will actively filter out opportunities, compliments, and solutions.
Oh, wow.
It will only highlight the threats. It proves you right, basically.
This is the classic red car phenomenon, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
You decide you want to buy a specific model of a bright red car, and suddenly you see that exact car on every single street corner.
Yep.
And it's not like the city overnight manufactured thousands of red cars just to mess with you. Your RAS was just finally programmed to let that specific data point through the filter to your conscious mind.
Exactly. And the authors tie this directly to neuroplasticity.
Right, the brain's ability to change.
Because for a long time, the scientific consensus was that the adult brain was fixed, like concrete that had already set.
Which is pretty depressing if you have bad habits.
Very. But we now know the brain is highly plastic. It constantly reorganizes itself. The mechanism is often summarized by the phrase, neurons that fire together wire together.
Meaning what, practically?
Every time you think a specific thought, you send an electrical pulse down a neural pathway. The more you send it, the more your brain coats that pathway in a fatty substance called myelin.
Okay, myelin, what does that do?
It acts like insulation on a copper wire. It makes the electrical signal travel faster and faster.
Oh, so the thought becomes more automatic.
Exactly. The visual the authors use for this is really brilliant. They compare repeated thoughts to water carving streams in a landscape of sand.
I love this analogy.
So at first, the water meanders, right? It finds resistance. It's hard to push through the dry dirt. But as the same water flows over the exact same path, day after day, year after year, it carves a deep groove.
And eventually, it becomes a rushing river cutting through a canyon.
Yes, that is what a habit is. That is what an automatic thought of self-doubt is. It's a rushing river in a deep canyon.
So trying to think a brand new empowering thought is literally like trying to force that rushing river out of its deep canyon to blaze a difficult, slow, brand new trail across dry, resistant ground.
It requires tremendous conscious effort at first, and that initial friction is where almost everyone quits.
Because it's exhausting.
It is. And because of how deeply those canyons are carved, the book points out a massive trap that people fall into.
Bit of a trap.
You cannot just fight the old thoughts. You can't just forcefully dam up the river.
Right. They bring up the ironic process theory here, which explores why suppression completely backfires.
Yes, the classic psychological test.
Let's do it right now. If I tell you with absolute authority, do not think of a bright pink elephant wearing sunglasses. What is your brain doing right this second?
It is immediately rendering a high-definition image of a pink elephant in sunglasses.
It's unavoidable. You can't not think about it once I say it.
No, you can't.
So if we know that forcefully suppressing bad thoughts just acts as a highlighter for them, and we know our subconscious is running an 11 million bit algorithm to show us exactly what we're afraid of.
Then how do we actually update this software?
Exactly. How do we divert the river if we can't build a dam?
You have to actively starve the old thoughts by choosing new reactions. You don't fight the pink elephant. You consciously choose to focus your 40 bits of attention entirely on a blue bicycle.
Just completely redirect.
Yes. Over time, neuroplasticity ensures that the unused pathway, the pink elephant, the anxiety loop begins to weaken. The myelin sheath degrades because it isn't being used, while the new pathway gets carved deeper.
Use it or lose it, literally.
Exactly. But to actually execute this in real time, in real life, you have to find the tiny, elusive gap between feeling an emotion and reacting to it.
Which, let's be honest, feels nearly impossible in the moment.
It really does.
Let's get into the mechanics of that gap, because the books make a very provocative claim here. They say emotions are information, not instructions. They are the weather report, not the steering wheel.
It requires a fundamental paradigm shift for most people, because the authors point out that the vast majority of society lives as absolute slaves to their emotional state.
We just do whatever the feeling tells us to do.
Right. They treat emotions as non-negotiable laws. If anger arises, the internal voice says attack, and they immediately lash out. If fear arises, it says hide, and they retreat.
We equate the physiological feeling with the behavioral necessity of the action.
Yes. And the text argues that you must validate the feeling without obeying its command.
I mean, I understand validating the feeling in theory, But in reality, anger doesn't politely hand you a weather report.
No, it doesn't.
In the heat of an argument, anger feels like someone else has violently grabbed the steering wheel of the car and slammed the gas. How do we actually break that loop of obedience when the body is already flooded with adrenaline?
The authors introduce a specific mechanical framework for this. They call it the pause formula.
The pause formula. Okay, walk me through it.
It's a 4-step process designed to intercept an emotional hijacking. Step 1 is definitely the hardest. Stop the reflex.
Stop.
Just stop. When a trigger hits, say you receive a deeply disrespectful email from a colleague, your biology reacts instantly. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing gets shallow, cortisol floods the system.
You want to fight back immediately.
Yes, but your training in that exact second is to freeze. For just 1 single second, do absolutely nothing.
Just take your hands off the keyboard.
Exactly. Do not hit reply.
Okay, that's step 1, stop the reflex.
Step 2, name the emotion. We touched on this earlier with the identity shift. You mentally state, I am noticing anger, or my chest is tight and I'm feeling disrespected.
And that does something biological, right?
Yeah, it does. The authors cite functional MRI studies here. When subjects put a negative notation into words, something incredible happens physically in the brain. The blood flow literally drains away from the amygdala, which is the emotional alarm center, and moves to the prefrontal cortex.
Wow.
Labeling the emotion actually applies the neurological brakes. It strips the emotion of its blind, chaotic authority.
That's fascinating. Just the simple act of naming it changes where the blood is flowing in your head.
Yes.
So you freeze, you label it to cool down the amygdala, and then what is step 3?
Step 3, ask the power question. Once your prefrontal cortex is back online, you ask yourself, what reaction protects my power right now?
That's a very specific phrasing.
It is. Notice it doesn't ask what protects your pride or what protects your ego or what delivers the best witty comeback.
Right.
It asks what protects your true power and your long-term goals. Getting into a shouting match via email might satisfy the ego for 10 seconds, but it ultimately destroys your power in the office.
Makes you look out of control. And then step 4 is simply choosing the response that aligns with that answer. Choosing the identity you actually want to build.
Correct. But I do want to address the friction you brought up earlier.
About the steering wheel.
Yeah, you asked how you find the brakes when you are already going 100 miles an hour. The authors completely concede that you cannot outthink a severely dysregulated nervous system.
If you're already seeing red, logic doesn't work.
Right. If you are already fully hijacked, the pause formula might fail because the prefrontal cortex is essentially locked out. So the books emphasize physical grounding to arrest the mind.
What does that look like?
You have to manually override the brain's software using the body's hardware. You have to force your exhalations to be twice as long as your inhalations. You have to physically feel your feet pressing onto the floor.
Because that sends a physical signal to the brain.
Yes, it signals to the vagus nerve that you are not actively being chased by a predator, which starts shutting off the adrenaline.
There is a critical time frame the books mention here too, the 90-second window.
Yes, this is crucial.
The research shows that the actual chemical rush of an emotion, the cortisol and adrenaline dumping into your bloodstream, only lasts for about 90 seconds.
Just a minute and a half.
Right. If you can intercept the trigger, use the body to ground yourself, and simply observe the feeling without feeding it new catastrophic thoughts, that chemical wave will naturally peak and begin to wash out of your system.
But the danger is what happens in second 91.
Yeah.
Those people don't let the chemical wash out. They feed the initial trigger with a secondary thought. They think, how dare they speak to me like that? They always do this. My career is over.
And then what happens?
That secondary thought triggers a brand new 90-second chemical dump. And then another thought triggers another dump, and another.
Which leads exactly to what happens when you miss that window entirely. The thought catches fire, and suddenly you aren't just having a momentary spike of anger, you are descending into a full-blown negative thought spiral.
The authors call it the mental tornado.
Which is a terrifying place to be.
It really is. The anatomy of a spiral is highly predictable once you understand the machinery we've been discussing. It starts with a single, often really ambiguous trigger.
Like a weird look from your boss.
Or a delayed text message from a partner. That trigger releases the initial stress hormones. And because your RAS is now primed for danger, your brain starts desperately searching for historical evidence to justify why those stress hormones are there.
It's trying to validate the fear.
Yes, so it grabs another negative memory and then another assumption. Suddenly, a delayed text message spirals into, they are ignoring me, They're going to leave me. I am fundamentally unlovable, and I will die alone.
It escalates so fast. I compare a negative spiral to a kitchen fire.
Oh, that's good.
Like, if a dish towel catches fire on the stove and you immediately throw baking soda on it, it's a minor inconvenience. You clean it up and you move on.
Right.
But if you just stand there, frozen, staring at it, or worse, if you start throwing paper towels on it, it catches the cabinets, it catches the ceiling, and suddenly it burns the whole house down.
The brain just incinerates its own logic.
Exactly. So to put that fire out, the books provide specific circuit breaker techniques.
Right, because when a spiral is fully activated, your brain's default mode network is caught in this obsessive loop. The authors insist that you must interrupt the pattern physically.
Physically interrupt it.
You cannot sit in the same chair, staring at the same wall, or lying in the same bed, expecting the spiral to stop by just thinking your way out of it. You can't outthink it.
So what do?
You have to get up, go for a brisk walk, do 20 jumping jacks, clap your hands loudly.
I'm sorry, clap your hands.
Yeah.
Why does that work? It sounds almost too simple or even kind of silly to stop a massive anxiety attack.
I know it sounds silly, but it works because of bilateral stimulation and spatial processing. When you force the body to engage in complex physical movement or process new spatial environments like walking outside, you force the brain to allocate processing power away from the internal looping thoughts.
It has to focus on not tripping over a curb.
Exactly. It focuses on navigating the physical world, it physically breaks the obsessive internal loop, and it helps metabolize the stuck stress hormones in your bloodstream.
So the physical movement is the baking soda on the kitchen fire.
Yes.
And once you stop the flames from spreading, you have to inspect the damage and figure out how it started. The authors talk about a technique called evidence examination.
This is where you bring the prefrontal cortex back to the table to dismantle the core fear of the spiral. You treat the catastrophic thought like a hostile witness on a stand.
You cross-examine yourself.
Basically, yeah. You challenge it by asking what actual, verifiable, objective evidence supports this absolute worst-case scenario.
Not feelings, not assumptions.
Great, hard evidence. And usually the answer is absolutely none. The spiral is built entirely on distorted interpretations. Furthermore, the books propose a non-negotiable rule here, the 24-hour rule.
I think this rule alone could save millions of careers and marriages.
It is profound in its simplicity. When you realize you are deep in a spiral, or even just coming out of one, you implement a hard ban on making any major decisions.
No sending any critical emails?
No taking any drastic actions for a full 24 hours. Because the neurotransmitters in your brain are still skewed, your perception of reality is currently distorted.
You're wearing panic goggles.
Yes.
Yes.
You must wait for the biological storm to pass before you survey the landscape and make a move.
I mean, how many relationships have been irreparably damaged by a text sent at 2 a.m. during an anxiety spiral?
Too many to count.
But I want to introduce a complication here.
Okay.
Because we are talking about this as if it is an entirely isolated internal process. What if the kitchen fire isn't starting purely from your own thoughts?
Yeah, I see where you're going.
What if the fire is being actively stoked by the people around you? I mean, you can do all the jumping jacks you want, but if you're surrounded by negativity, pessimism, and panic, aren't you just bailing water out of a boat with a massive hole in the bottom?
That is the exact friction point the authors pivot to next. You cannot master your internal world if your external world is constantly feeding you poison.
Right.
This leads to the absolute necessity of building mental immunity and ruthlessly curating your environment, because your environment is relentlessly programming your subconscious, whether you consent to it or not.
Because of that 11 million bits per second, it's just absorbing everything around it.
Exactly. And the scientific basis for this environmental programming is emotional contagion, which is driven by mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons.
Yeah, so in the 90s, researchers discovered that humans and other primates too have specific neurons that fire both when we perform an action and when we simply observe someone else performing that action.
So we literally mirror them neurologically.
We do. We are biologically hardwired to mimic the emotional states of the people around us. It is an ancient, highly effective survival mechanism.
How so?
Well, if you are foraging in a forest and one person in the tribe suddenly looks absolutely terrified, your mirror neurons ensure that you feel terrified instantly. It prepares you to run before you even have time to consciously look for the tiger.
So it bypasses logic entirely.
Completely.
Which means if you spend your days surrounded by chronic complainers or office gossips or drama seekers, your nervous system is literally absorbing their stress and anxiety, as if the threats were your own.
It's secondhand smoke for your brain.
That is such a vivid way to put it.
It creates a chronic state of low-grade fight or flight. And this is why the books advocate for a strict, uncompromising information diet.
You have to audit your inputs.
With the exact same intensity you would audit your finances. That means auditing the accounts you follow on social media, auditing toxic or draining relationships, and intensely auditing your consumption of sensationalized news.
Because if you start your morning by lying in bed and flooding your brain with global catastrophes, political outrage, and algorithmically optimized panic, you are pre-programming your RAS.
You are telling your brain, the world is on fire and we are in danger.
And your brain will spend the rest of the day looking for evidence to confirm that panic.
Exactly. And beyond just cutting out the toxic inputs, the authors talk about the necessity of injecting deliberate quiet. They champion a concept called strategic solitude.
I found this fascinating because they make a very sharp distinction here. Solitude is not loneliness.
No, it's not.
Loneliness is a state of deficit and pain. Solitude is a state of strategy and power.
Solitude is a weapon for clarity. You see, the modern default human condition is constant, relentless stimulation. We have music playing while we work, podcasts playing while we commute, notifications pinging constantly.
Screens glowing in our faces until the second we close our eyes.
Right. So the 11 million bit processor never gets a single moment of empty space to actually process the backlog of data.
It's always downloading, never installing.
Exactly. So the books recommend a practice of scheduled thinking. This is just 10 minutes a day of absolute silence. No phone, no music, no meditation app guiding you. Just sitting in a chair and observing what the mind brings up.
Which, to be honest, is terrifying for a lot of people.
Oh, it's incredibly uncomfortable at first.
Because when the noise stops, the things you've been actively avoiding bubble right up to the surface.
That is precisely the point. The silence forces you to confront the data. What decisions are you avoiding? What boundary needs to be drawn? What is actually bothering you beneath the surface distraction?
And they take this a step further, don't they?
They do, with the recommendation of a digital fast. They suggest carving out 3 hours a day with absolutely no phone, no screens, and no notifications, just unmediated presence in the physical world. It actually resets the dopamine baseline in the brain.
I mean, I love the idea of a digital fast, but let me challenge this entire fortress concept for a second.
Yeah.
Because putting up all these walls, auditing relationships, cutting out the news, going offline for hours, it can sound a bit like building a privileged echo chamber.
I can see that.
Or like putting your head in the sand and ignoring the very real suffering in the world. How do we stay informed citizens? How do we remain empathetic to our friends who are struggling without becoming infected by the contagion and losing our own mental stability?
That is a vital distinction to make, and the authors actually anticipate this critique. The goal of the mental fortress isn't isolation. The goal is immunity.
Immunity, okay.
They clarify this with what they call the deflection technique. A healthy boundary is not a solid, impenetrable wall. It is a semi-permeable filter.
How did that work in practice?
When you encounter negative energy, say a friend is venting excessively, or you're reading a really tragic news story, you don't absorb the emotion, but you also don't aggressively fight it. You practice compassionate detachment.
Compassionate detachment?
You hold space for their pain, you send thoughts of empathy, but you visualize deflecting the anxious energy back. You recognize this is their storm, not mine.
That's a powerful shift.
You can be deeply aware of the world's problems and actively work to solve them without allowing the anxiety of those problems to hijack your nervous system. You remain engaged, but you act from a state of centered strength, not reactive panic.
Because you can't pull someone out of quicksand if you jump in with them.
Right, you have to stay on solid ground.
You have to. Okay, so let's say you've done the work. You've cleared the static.
Yeah.
Your mental environment is clean. You are managing your triggers. You've stopped the spirals.
Right.
Now what? How do you actually start building the specific life, the habits, and the identity you want? The sources suggest a very counterintuitive approach here. It doesn't happen in grand cinematic moments. It starts microscopically.
Yes. This brings us to the architecture of discipline. We have this culturally romanticized Hollywood idea of transformation.
Like a movie montage.
Exactly. We believe you wake up one day, hit rock bottom, have a massive epiphany, and suddenly change your entire life in one massive leap. But the books argue that this is a myth that sets people up for failure.
It's just not how biology works.
No, true. Lasting transformation happens in the invisible, mundane, 2-minute micro decisions made when absolutely no one is watching.
It's the 1% rule of incremental discipline. We've heard versions of this, like atomic habits, but the way they frame the biology of it is really compelling.
It's based on lowering the barrier to entry for the amygdala.
How so?
If you tell your brain, I am going to work out for 2 hours a day starting tomorrow, the brain interprets that massive change as a threat to its energy reserves, and it triggers resistance.
It says absolutely not, we will die.
Exactly. But if you say, I am going to do 5 push-ups, the brain doesn't register it as a threat, it allows the action. If you improve by just 1% every day, the compound interest of that neurological discipline yields massive results over a year.
But the authors highlight a major psychological trap here, which they call the danger of needing applause.
This is huge in the age of social media.
It really is.
If you are only executing your discipline so that others will validate you posting your workout, bragging about your early wake-up time, you are not growing an identity. You are performing for an audience.
You're acting.
Seeking external validation outsources your dopamine to other people's opinions. It makes you a slave to the audience. True sovereignty comes from executing the micro-decisions purely for the internal proof they provide.
You do the hard thing to prove to yourself who you are, not to prove it to the internet.
Exactly.
And this internal proof plays out immediately, literally the second you wake up. The authors point to morning rituals, arguing that the first 10 minutes of the day entirely set the mental frontier for the next 16 hours.
The biology of sleep inertia explains why. When you first wake up, your brain is transitioning out of delta, and theta brainwaves the states of deep sleep and dreaming, and it's moving into alpha and beta waves of conscious alertness.
You're kind of in a twilight state.
Right. And in those first 10 minutes, your subconscious is incredibly malleable. The gate between the conscious and subconscious mind is wide open.
So whatever you put in goes straight to the hard drive.
Yes. If your very first micro decision is to reach over to your nightstand, grab your phone, open an app, and react to a notification or a work email, you have surrendered control of your mind before your feet have even touched the floor.
You have literally started the day in a state of chaos. You are instantly reacting to someone else's agenda, someone else's emergency, or an algorithm's demand for your attention.
It's a terrible way to start.
Instead, the books suggest utilizing habit stacking and micro-resolutions to take command of that open window.
Habit stacking leverages existing neural pathways. You take a habit you already do automatically, like turning on the coffee maker or brushing your teeth, and you attach a new, tiny discipline to it.
Like after I start the coffee, I will drink 1 full glass of water.
Yes. And after I drink the water, I will read 1 single page of a book. The actions are so small, they're practically impossible to fail.
But what do they actually do?
They send a powerful, immediate message to your subconscious. I am a person who dictates my own actions. I am a person who follows through.
I relate this instantly to the concept of hitting the snooze button.
Oh, the snooze button is fascinating.
It seems like the most innocent, harmless thing in the world, right? It's just 10 more minutes of sleep. What could it possibly matter?
But psychologically, the authors argue it's profound.
Yes. You set an intention the night before. I will wake up at 6 a.m. to work on my business. When the alarm goes off at 6 a.m., your very first conscious action of the day is breaking a promise to yourself.
It's a betrayal.
You are casting a micro-vote for the identity of someone who chooses immediate comfort over long-term commitment.
That is the exact mechanism of identity formation. Your character isn't forged in battle. It is forged in the crucible of those tiny, invisible votes.
The ones nobody sees.
If you break the first promise of the day, your brain registers that your word to yourself means absolutely nothing. But of course, the authors recognize reality.
Which is that life isn't perfectly controllable.
Right. Maintaining that microscopic discipline is relatively easy when the sea is calm and your life is stable. But no matter how perfectly you stack your habits or how fiercely you guard your mornings, life is eventually going to hit you with a sledgehammer.
A crisis will occur.
A catastrophic failure will happen, and how you process that impact defines your ultimate trajectory.
Which moves us into the final phase of this mastery, forging iron. How to handle pain, setbacks, and extreme accountability.
The core concept here is that discomfort is the raw currency of progress. Growth demands neurological and psychological tension.
It's supposed to be hard.
Exactly. Setbacks are not dead ends. They are data points. They are jet fuel for momentum, provided you process them through the correct cognitive framework.
Now, we talked earlier about how the brain is a survival machine. Here's where that programming gets incredibly tricky when you're trying to grow. The authors point out a massive flaw in our software. The brain's survival mechanism cannot tell the difference between temporary discomfort and actual mortal danger.
This is a concept related to what psychologists call neuroception. When you step outside your comfort zone, say you decide to launch a new project, or set a firm boundary with a toxic family member, or pivot your career, your brain's amygdala fires up.
Because it's new.
It senses unfamiliarity. To the primitive brain, unfamiliarity equals a lack of predictability, and a lack of predictability equals death.
Wow.
It interprets the discomfort of growth as a literal threat to your survival. So it floods you with anxiety, imposter syndrome, and panic to force you to retreat to the safety of what you know.
It wants you back in the cave.
Yes. You have to consciously override those false biological alarms. You have to use your prefrontal cortex to tell your nervous system this elevated heart rate isn't because there is a tiger in the room. It is because I am having a difficult conversation that will ultimately improve my life.
And while you're fighting your own biology, you are also fighting your past identity. The text mentions that the old self fights back aggressively.
Oh, it really does.
It uses psychological gravity to pull you down, tempting you with comfort and highly rational-sounding excuses to just quit and go back to normal.
The old self doesn't want to die because the old self is comfortable. When you face a setback, the old self will encourage you to play the victim. It will whisper, "See, we tried to be disciplined and we failed anyway. The system is rigged against us. Let's just go back to scrolling and numbing out."
So how do we beat that voice?
The books demand that you ruthlessly reframe failure strictly into feedback. A failure is never a permanent indictment of your worth. It is simply an objective exposure of a system you need to build next.
That is such a clinical, helpful way to look at it.
If a project collapsed, it isn't because you are inherently flawed. It is because your planning system, your communication system, or your emotional regulation system failed. You extract the data, leave the emotion behind, and you build a better system.
And that requires staring into what the authors call the mirror of extreme accountability, which is arguably the hardest pill to swallow in both of these books.
It is brutal, but it is the key to the entire philosophy. Extreme accountability means you have to accept that you are exactly where your choices have placed you.
Ouch.
Not your circumstances, not the economy, not your luck, but your ultimate responses to those circumstances. Taking total ownership strips away the warm, fuzzy comfort of excuses.
Which we all love to cling to.
But in exchange for that comfort, it returns all of your power. The logic is unbreakable. If your choices got you into this situation, your choices are the only thing that can get you out.
I do need to ask a critical question here, though, because we hear this push through the pain, embrace the grind, take total ownership mentality constantly in high-performance spaces, and it can easily tip into toxicity.
It absolutely can.
So how does someone actually distinguish between the good pain of growth, like the tearing of a muscle fiber so it can rebuild stronger, and the bad pain of genuine burnout, systemic abuse, or staying in a situation that absolutely should be abandoned?
That's the line everyone struggles to find.
When is the discomfort a signal to dig deep and grow? And when is it a blaring alarm to pack up and leave?
That is where the pause formula and the concept of the observer become completely essential. You have to step back and look at objective data, not the immediate emotional strain.
What are we looking for in the data?
If the pain is refining your skills, expanding your capacity, or testing your patience in pursuit of a deeply meaningful goal, it is the friction of growth. It is eustress positive stress. It is good pain.
And bad pain.
If the pain requires you to constantly violate your core moral values, if it is degrading your baseline mental or physical health with absolutely no return on investment, or if the objective feedback over a long period is that a situation or relationship is fundamentally toxic and unyielding, that is harm.
Not growth, harm.
Growth pain challenges your capabilities. Harm pain compromises your character and your physiological health. Extreme accountability doesn't mean enduring abuse. Sometimes the most accountable choice you can make is the choice to walk away.
That clarity is vital. You have to be the architect of the boundary just as much as the architect of the discipline.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack everything we've traversed today. This has been a massive, deep journey through the actual architecture of the mind.
It really has. If we synthesize all the literature from these sources, the overarching narrative is one of profound reclamation.
Taking your mind back.
Right. It starts with recognizing that you are the observer, fundamentally separating your core identity from the passing chaotic weather of your thoughts.
You are the house, not the storm.
You then begin to understand the machinery. that your neural pathways can be physically rewired through neuroplasticity, and your RAS can be reprogrammed to seek out opportunity rather than obsessing over threat.
And then taking action on it.
You practice the mechanical steps of the pause formula to insert a wedge of conscious control between feeling an emotion and blindly acting upon it. You use physical circuit breakers to halt negative spirals before they burn the house down.
You curate your environment.
You ruthlessly curate it to build mental immunity against emotional contagion. You realize that true transformation happens in the invisible, unglamorous micro decisions of your morning routine, not in seeking applause.
And finally, accountability.
You accept that setbacks are just data, and extreme accountability is the ultimate key to freedom.
It all culminates in true sovereignty. A state where respect isn't earned by being the loudest in the room, or having the most followers, or forcing the world to cater to your triggers.
True sovereignty is mastering your internal world so comprehensively, so deeply, that external chaos simply cannot shake your foundation.
When you master the inner world, the outer world begins to align, not by manifestation or magic, but because your decisions, your reactions, your emotional baseline, and your focus are operating with lethal precision.
You are no longer reacting to the world. You are responding to it on your own terms.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? I want to leave you with a final challenge, inspired by the visualization techniques detailed in our sources.
It's a great exercise.
Imagine, just for a moment, that your mind is a physical room, a room you have to live inside every single day of your life. Look around that mental room right now. What does the current furniture say about you?
Are the walls lined with heavy, old resentments that you keep dusting off?
Is there a pile of dusty, outdated beliefs about what you can't do sitting in the corner?
Are there anxious, frantic thought loops playing on a screen you can't seem to turn off?
It is your room. You are the only one who holds the key to it. You are the only one who allowed that furniture in, and you are the absolute only one who can clean it.
Nobody else can do it for you.
So here is the question to sit with. The very moment this deep dive ends, when the silence hits, what is the very first piece of mental clutter you're going to pick up and throw out?
The choice, as always, is entirely yours.